And next up, we've got Daniela talking about new projects versus security investment. So please welcome Daniela.
Hi guys. Let me see if I can share my screen.
You should be. Are you able to share right now?
Let me see.
Yes.
Yes?
Yep.
Great. So this talk, it's basically a one slider, and it's an invitation for everyone to join the little rainbow in the middle of communication. And it's all about how a new project starts in a business. And in most cases, you have a group or a business or a company you work in, and everybody is enthusiastic and they start a new project, and they have many, many different reasons for that. In many cases, it's more profit or easy things to do automated, or just a new idea, or basically extending the office to new locations. Many, many reasons new project get started. What happens? Then the actual project is started, the business starts planning, they allocate some money for it, they start discussing what has to be done. There's a lot of board meetings in the beginning. The schedule is done, and this is basically, in many of these cases, the IT is being or left alone or seen as an afterthought or just part of the implementation. So there's these little hurdles between the actual business and the IT part of the project. And I know many of us who are in this call, we are here in this little happy bubble, because if you work for an IT company where the first priority is to actually implement everything secure and to have a project which corresponds to all type of sort of compliance and security, and people are extremely technical, especially also in this area of business. So things are being thought of from the beginning. So we are basically all in this little blue square. But in some cases, and in most cases, companies are not, the primary goal is not IT. So for example, if you have a factory and somebody decides to buy this extremely nice, cool robot who can manufacture the entire process for a month in one day, but it's the extremely new, cool robot, it's running in Windows XP and cannot be patched. So then you have a problem. Then we should discuss this from the beginning, because as you can see, the business needs it. The IT says, okay, there is a problem with it. And then you end up in this case in which you would be tempted to say no. But it's not always easy to say no to something like this to the business. So that's why the most important part is the communication. And even in the IT part, we see there's large companies who have an entire DevOps IT crew. There is the small company who has, I always like this drawing for a small company IT guy who has like a thing with many, many, many hands, does every job in IT. Or you have a provider or some external company who does your IT. In all these cases, there are resources. There is somebody who has a deep understanding of what's the real impact. There is also somebody who can change your decision from no to something else, because maybe there is a way to make it work. And an open discussion is always possible. So in this case, we don't have like a board meeting. I don't know if you can see my mouse here. So the board meeting, which is very formal, but you can do something more informal, something like the IT pizza evening or the IT nachos evening. And you can try to change this option of no from integrating your XP factory robot to something else. And you have to think, what are the options here? Like, how would you have it work? For example, ideally, you want this completely isolated air gap from everything else. That's also not possible, because this robot has to be controlled. So you have to do, maybe think it first for plan, because if you plan security from the beginning, it is going to be much easier in the future. So if you plan to isolate it in a network, to put some controls in front of it, to do a separation of duties that only the person managing this machine has access, to do a separation of usability. So for example, the person who is managing the robot, who's accessing it, doesn't start opening the private Gmail account on the same machine, clicking on all the links. Then you can also, of course, offer creating alternatives. For example, you have the situation where also in a factory, you have people who do have to be able to open the private email, because otherwise they're going to leave the job and you're going to have no employee. Creating alternative I've seen in the past, for example, I like that one very much, was in a secure network, basically in an isolated network where only specific robots and managing machines were allowed. People would get an iPad for accessing internet and private emails, and those iPads would be just the image if something happens, or they will be in a guest network. They will not have the same. They will not have any impact on the actual company, on the actual business network. So they're always creating alternative, and there's always a way to fit in a solution if you think it first. But security has to be integrated in a project from the beginning. If it's an afterthought, then it's usually more expensive. It's usually creating a lot of frustrations. It's usually making the business not trust IT. The IT have a sort of frustration relation with the business. And this hurdle, the little hurdles here, is not only then from above to down, but you also will have them when your IT people start to communicate back to business. So that's why I put the communication as like the most colorful central thing in this slide. And also there's something else I've seen long ago when I first joined to do my CISSP, and at that point in time you had to find a sponsor who would recommend you and everything. So this guy was working for an insurance company, and he developed a very simple method in which he would take every project and have a simple estimation, what's the impact on the IT environment of the company. If, assuming that everything is being corrupt, everything is being exposed in this project, what's the impact? And you would have projects where the impact is very little. For example, when you have people using a specific application, let's say now in a cloud, and they want to use a new feature of this application. Once you have everything secure, design, using a new feature, it's usually just a few checks. The impact is not so high. But for example, let's take back our robot. Business really needs it, because without it, for example, this particular case, somebody would go out of business, or somebody would have very little influence across competition. But the impact is high, because if you, at this point in time, you put an XP machine, which by some sort of means is connected or accessible directly from the internet, it's a matter of, well, not day, maybe hours until it's fully compromised, and everything you spend on this machine, it's basically gone. But not only, maybe your entire business is being defaced and destroyed and deleted and information stolen. So the impact is very high. So you have to allocate a budget to secure this asset. So that's why this two-dimensional graphics, it's very nice as a scale to say, I have a project which possible huge impact on security, so I have to make sure I do certain steps to secure it. I have a project with very little steps on security. I have to make the steps, but maybe my budget is minimal to allocate in the beginning. And then there's a limit in which you are looking to say, okay, I can't afford to start a project maybe. So maybe you have to say no to start with. Or maybe you have a project in which you say, okay, we are really at the limit. We have to make sure we at least pass the mandatory things for this project. But not thinking at all about it and leave it random, not allocating a budget for security. And what I see also as common, not allocating a budget for operation security. So you allocate a budget to implement this little tool, firewall, whatever you need to make sure it's secure now, but you don't allocate an operational budget to make sure somebody's looking at it, somebody's reviewing, somebody's updating, somebody's maybe redesigning it in 10 years from now when things would completely change in your infrastructure. So that's why an open communication is essential. And what I've seen from my career so far, that simple real world examples work the best. For example, somebody decides to buy this new fancy TV at the reception, and this new fancy TV is a Windows operating system. I don't think now anyone would think to update the TV at the reception, but there is an impact. What's the impact if, for example, somebody is ransoming that TV, and at the entry of your reception, when your customers or potential partners come and they see a TV screen with a ransomware note, maybe it's wise not to connect this TV to the network. Thinking from the beginning, the investment is really minimal in these cases. People can relate to this. If you are telling now a average business person, okay, if you are clicking on an email which you don't know about, on an email which obviously looks like somebody's trying to steal from you, to fish from you, then really bad things can happen, that you can infect the entire company, that you can spread ransomware, that your system, that maybe somebody takes fully aware a hold of your email account and sends bills to your partners, and so they will understand it. They all can relate to such clear example. If you tell them, for example, okay, you bought this machine and you place these machines, and maybe they have a very fancy exploit, but they can be hacked. A way to explain to this is to explain the risk. Like, what is the risk if that happens? The risk is you cannot use these machines. The risk is information can be stolen. The risk is somebody can use that machine to get access to everything you own as intellectual property. So the understanding is there. The average business person can grasp the risk. You just have to try to make it more relatable, to correlate it to an example. And don't hesitate to do these silly little drawings like this one page. In some cases, it does help. It helps more than a 10-page text, because from my experience, also, for example, when you do a test or an audit or a pen test or a technical audit of a company, they tend to read the first page. They tend to really look at the drawings. Everybody looks at the drawings. The most colorful drawings, they'll remember them. The text, less. So in this case, well, I always add pink in the brain because I'm a big fan. But in this case, once you discussed it, once you have a plan and you are aware of the risk, and you say, okay, we are going to do this project, and we're going to make sure we have an actual limit of what we accept as risk, there is a big chance that this project is going to be a success from a security point of view, at least. And these are the actual IT nerds, as the business sees us in most cases, which manage to communicate with the business, and they are heroes without capes. I tried to find one with cape, but I couldn't find one with cape. So in this case, they are heroes without a cape, and the project is a success. So that's my 10 minutes rambling about how to look at risk when you start a new business project. And let me see what's the chat. Are there questions, or are there ideas how to improve this rambling about starting a project?
Does anyone have any questions for Daniela? I think that questions seem to be, oh, is Andre chiming in with a question?
No questions, but I just like that business to IT stuff. At the same time, discussion later on, so that's nice.
I think that there's a question, how do you have the management care about security? I don't think they really care about security. I do think they care about the risk. What's the impact? If, for example, in this case, the whole factory stops, that's a risk they can understand. this kind of, so the risk, it's always more interesting for them than the actual technical details, how it works, or the impact on caring pure about IT or security.
Okay, well, I think there's a little less questions at this time of night, but thank you very much for joining us, Daniela, and for
Thank you, guys.
talking to us about investments in security.
Thank you, guys.